And so students go into the interview process trying to stand out and trying to be grandiose and unique. And that's the exact opposite of what you should be doing in an interview. Application Renovation Season 4, Episode 4. How you doing today?
Fantastic. Living the dream.
Living the dream. I'm excited to talk to you because you're an unusual application renovation student. You got into medical school.
I did, yeah, just barely. It was by far the best Christmas present I could have gotten. So
Yeah, that's awesome. So let's talk about the fact that you had to apply twice. You got in kind of by the hair on your chinny chin chins there to medical school. And the reason I'm still having you on application renovation is because your stats are amazing, which students think is the only thing that drives acceptance to medical schools, but it's not. And so I'm very interested to take a look at your application again, even though you did get into one school, potentially seeing how you could have gotten into more schools with the stats behind your application. Talk about, I had mentioned second application cycle. How many interviews? What did that look like in terms of 2 application cycles and interviews?
yeah, so in the first application cycle, I received 5 interviews. The second application cycle, 5 as well.
Okay.
And interestingly enough, from different areas. So
interesting. Applying to the same schools, but different schools interviewing you both times.
Yes, I slightly changed my list just to better cater to kind of, schools that fit with my mission and that I identified with. But yeah, for the majority, it was the same schools.
Post-interview, first application cycle, straight rejections, wait lists, what did that look like?
Wait lists across the board.
Okay. Why do you think they were wait lists?
I didn't take the interview as seriously as I thought I should have. I prepared. I found the most commonly asked questions. I did my best to prepare using those, but I didn't have answers to those questions that I think highlighted me as an individual, that showed why I was unique. For example, like the why medicine, that was, I think I gave a very subpar response to that. And I think I could have done a much better job had I.
Do you think there's a unique reason why you're going into medicine? I
do, yeah. Particularly from my background, my upbringing.
Okay. I'll tell you, you're wrong.
I am? Okay.
there's nothing unique about it. I guarantee you. I guarantee you. And I joke about it, right? Because we're all special, we're all individuals, we're all unique, blah blah blah. The thing that students make the biggest mistake, and you said it, was I didn't give answers that are unique. You're not unique. And so students go into the interview process trying to stand out and trying to be grandiose and unique, and that's the exact opposite of what you should be doing in an interview. I think. Okay. And so it's interesting to hear you say that you think you failed because you weren't doing those things, and I'm saying, oh, you probably would have failed if you did those things, and maybe there's something else here that's missing as well. So we'll never know. I wasn't in the room with you, but one of the biggest mistakes is that students tried to be unique through this process, and there's just, unless you cured cancer and you have that as a research thing on your application, there's nothing you're doing that's unique.
Okay.
Sorry to burst your bubble and everyone else's bubble out there. All right. So application cycle number 1, 5 interviews, feels good, but wait lists across the board. Going into application cycle number 2, like, what do you do differently?
Yeah, so I spent a lot of time meeting with admissions committees from various schools that were willing to meet with me. Many weren't. Talking to advisors, listening to podcasts and everything. And so I narrowed kind of like my main weaknesses into a few different categories. I revamped my personal statement to better, articulate why I want to go into medicine, why not another career, maybe in, social work or something else, or nursing or PA. I revamped my secondary essays to be more personal, to try and highlight, stories rather than just show and tell. And then also, updated it with new activities that I'd been involved in over COVID, and all of that.
All right. Ready to take a look at your application?
Let's do it.
All right. So first thing I always point out, you applied June 7th, nice and early. Great job. No issues there. We go down to the SES disadvantage. I always like to highlight that. So based on parental education levels, no SES disadvantage, no big red flags, no military service, no issues there. Didn't mark yourself as disadvantaged. So we get through all the demographic areas, no big issues there. We get to grades, and we see a couple A's here and there. I mean, not terrible. So GPA-wise, a B+. Organic chemistry. Ooh, that weeded you out almost, huh? Got that B+ in organic chemistry and another B+ in genetics. Interesting. So all A's and 2 B+?
That's correct.
Those are your grades. Wow. It's not too shabby. 3 A's. It's interesting. It's all A's, and obviously A- don't count as 4.0. But it's interesting how basically all A's and 2 B's is a 386. I'm like, why isn't this like a 399 or something? But anyway.
Yeah, really though.
So 386 science GPA, fantastic. 392 cumulative GPA, fantastic. MCAT score, 1 and done 520. How the heck did you do that?
Great question. Lots of work. Started the fall prior. Spent a lot of time studying. I did a program. I'm currently a mentor for them now. And, being able to, I had my own mentor, and being able to, use their tips and tricks and then apply them in my own unique way really, really helped a lot. So
obviously crushed it. Biochem, perfect score. Overall, fantastic. So I look at this, and everyone looks at this. All the students look at this and go, okay, amazing stats. Like, how did you not get in the first time? And so I always lean on, right? It's much more than your stats. Your stats have to show that you're academically capable, and then show me everything else. And so academically capable, you knock that one out of the park. Great job. Then we get to activities. Your first activity here on the AMCAS PDF is this research assistant. And it was okay. Nice little description. Nothing special. It is what it is. I did like that you projected out the end date. Too many students are putting, okay, I'm submitting my application June 7th, so all of my end dates for my activities, even if I'm still doing them, are going to be June 2021 or June or whatever year that you're applying. You project it out, right? May of 2022. Not bad. Good job. Paid employment, medical, clinical, MCAT mentor. You have here, obviously, you get a 520. MCAT companies are going to want to talk to you to see if you're going to be a good teacher for them. And so you've been doing that. You wrote probably the kind of generic tutoring, teaching, mentor type statement that I always say students write. You did that, like verbatim. Yeah. Mentoring taught me the importance of adapting my teaching styles to meet their unique needs, right? That's literally the line that I use all the time when I'm like giving the most cliche answer for how you can write about tutoring. Okay. Because that's what tutors do, right? You are adapting your teaching styles, good tutors at least, teachers are adapting learning styles, teaching styles, right? And so that's kind of a given. Now show me who you are. Show me the impact behind that. That's where you take it a step further and show who you are, and not this like, oh, look at me, I can adapt my teaching styles, right? Okay. And then the biggest thing that I see in your application that I wanted to highlight and why I still wanted you on, and thank you for coming on and being vulnerable. Even with your acceptance, you're on application renovation, is the connection that you made almost every activity description to what that's going to be like as a physician. My recommendation, don't do that at all. You don't know what it's going to be like as a physician. You can assume, but you have zero idea because you're not one yet. And that's not talking down to you or anything. It's just you don't know because you're not one. And the goal of going to medical school or getting into medical school isn't to prove like I understand all of the nuances of being a physician. It's to understand I like being around patients and caring for them and being part of a healthcare team. I want to be a doctor, not like I can apply this skill to my future patient's concern and it'll help you readjust your approach to provide more comprehensive and individualized care. Like, you don't need to make those connections for the reviewer.
Okay. That would change a lot of my activities.
It would change all of your activities almost, right? And so it would take that out.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of this kind of forced, I'm going to try to show you how this works and connects with being a physician. Several episodes ago, the first episode of season 4, Application Renovation, a student took a tailoring hobby, like sewing outfits together. That could have been an amazing description of showing me the colors of the outfits he was tailoring and creating. Could have been an amazing description that was like, wow, that's amazing. He instead said, well, sewing, tailoring, and using fine threads and handling with my hands is similar to suturing. And so I'm basically going to be a great suturer, right?
Whatever that word is.
No, don't make those connections. You don't have to. I just want to see who you are, not this kind of twisted and mangled of like, this has nothing to do with medicine, but I'm going to show you how it has to do with medicine, because it's not you that I'm seeing here. Okay? This is just your projection of what you think things are going to work and what you think I want to hear. I'm missing you from this. That's the biggest feedback that I give all the time on application renovation is I'm missing you, right? So BYU COVID-19 Tutors co-founder, fantastic, right? Quickly recruited 130 tutors, services to more than 5,000 students. That's fantastic. That's impact. That's huge. And then, as a doctor, I will be able to continue channeling desires to serve by creating similar opportunities for I don't need it. Keep it away. Keep it away. Cardiac rehabilitation intern, not terrible here. Tell me the story of one of the patients, right? Show me your life through an interaction with a patient. That, to me, and it gets old after a while. If you watch enough application renovation videos, I'm sorry. My message is pretty consistent. Stories connect human beings. So if you can tell me a story, then I can feel you, I can see you, I can hear you, I can understand you outside of 520, 386 science GPA. And that is the connection that I want to see, both on your application and going back to your earlier comments about interview prep as well. My guess is that you oversold in those and tried to show off. Likely. And be a little bit grandiose there instead of just like being yourself and connecting as a human being. I always tell a story of one student, amazing applicant, took her 3 times to get into medical school. First application cycle, she had some GPA issues. She fixed those, no interviews. Second application cycle, she had 6 interviews and 6 waitlists. And she worked with me for interview prep. She found me after that, I think, and this was several years ago before YouTube and other stuff kind of became bigger, for me at least. And we did some interview prep together. And her first interview was atrocious, like her first mock interview with me. I'm like, now I know why you got waitlisted everywhere, because you are just trying to force feed all of this agenda into the conversation, trying to show how you're unique, trying to show how you're qualified, trying to show how amazing you are. I just want to have a conversation with you. Like, just let's talk. So we fixed that, right? Or not fix is the wrong word, but I showed her a different approach to it. Next application cycle, same number of interviews, or a couple more interviews, and 6 acceptances. Okay. So just a small little tweak in her communication style, both written potentially for you and verbal in the interview. Just the connection is just so different. Stories. Research lab experience here that you have. You have this shear wave elastography, which is interesting. I don't know if I've seen that. I've never seen an experience description written this way. Where did you learn how to write this? Proficiencies developed, impact, leadership.
That's a fantastic question.
You got it from someone.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know. It might have been from a podcast. I've listened to quite a few.
Yeah.
Or from, one of the many med school application help websites or whatever.
Got it.
I just thought it was succinct, clear, and then my meaningful experience would do the description. But
yeah. I would never recommend doing this. Yeah.
Okay,
I'm not a bullet point person except for like just listing awards, listing shadowing opportunities, that kind of stuff. It's just impersonal, right? Again, I want to know who you are, and it's like a resume in front of me instead of getting to know you. So I definitely wouldn't recommend doing that. And yeah, you have your most meaningful remarks here. It's interesting. The most meaningful remarks seem like they're short, and I didn't character count it, but it'd be interesting to know how many characters are here, because it seems like it could be a lot more. I'm trying to go to another most meaningful here. If I were to look at another most meaningful, how many lines here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, if I could count with my little pen here. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, there's 9 lines compared to 10 lines. So obviously lines aren't characters, but it seems a little shorter than the other ones. So you might have skimped on it a little bit. But it was decent. I didn't mark it up at all. Nothing big to say. So good enough there. You have your door-to-door pest control sales representative. It's 4 months you have listed here, April 2018 to August 2018. Are those dates correct? Roughly?
They're correct.
You have 1,020 hours.
That is
correct.
Which
is 60 hours a week.
That is correct.
That's correct.
It was a lot. Yeah, sun up to sundown, even past sundown. I think the latest I knocked on a door and made a sale was probably like 10:20.
Wow. All right. You're one of those waking my kids up.
Yes, sorry.
Interesting.
For college somehow.
Yeah. Interesting job. Why were you doing door-to-door pest control sales?
Money.
Yeah.
To pay the bills, rent, everything, so I could focus on schooling.
Yeah. Interesting. Was that during the summer? Like
it was.
You were in between? Interesting. Okay. Yeah, it's a good job. I think sales is an amazing job for everyone, just because.
As far as personability, the ability to talk to anyone about anything, it helped.
Anyone, anything, rejection, being okay with rejection and no's, and it's awesome. Again, decent little story here. Not bad. We get to Buddies on the Keys, founder and director. So some hours there. Again, little sales pitchy with your writing of required me to be innovative and take initiative. Good impact here. Impact more than 45 individuals. Log over 800 total service hours, which is great. And then again, the connection to medicine here at the end. My natural interest in the sciences of medicine. I joked about it in the last episode of Application Renovation, season 4, episode 3, of like this just impulsive need to just tell people I love to learn and I love science, and I just need to let you know in case you didn't know that already. It's so funny. So it's just like, you don't need it, stay away from it. And then the connection to medicine, excited to foster healing environment, blah blah blah. So I won't beat a dead horse, as they say. Another very common cliche that students think they need to inject into their story, into their writing, for your Spanish medical interpreter, which I'm glad you call it interpreter and not translator. You put here, I found myself completing a shift feeling energized and excited for the rest of the day. It's a very common phrase and saying of like, everyone was tired, but I was so energized like, I'm ready. Like the tireless excitement. I have highlighted a couple of sentences down of like this, like, it's okay. Like, I understand medicine's going to be hard, but I have the energy to do it. I'm excited to do it. I'm ready to do it. And oh, by the way, did I mention I like science?
Yeah.
Right. So again, it's just very these common cliches that sneak in, and it's subconscious almost, I think, to put that kind of stuff in. You have shadowing hours that end in 2019. Could have been extended out with virtual shadowing and stuff to help kind of pad's not the right word, but just to show consistency over time, even with the pandemic. But lots of hours, great variety. So good job there. And again, from a bullet point standpoint, perfect for this kind of thing. Yeah. Accounting internship. So accounting, you're like, how can I turn this into? How is this going to help me as a doctor?
Yeah, let me tell you. This took some time.
Yeah, I bet. And that's the thing, right? Because it's not necessarily your truth, it took some time. It's harder. So again, just staying away from that kind of stuff. Volunteering for Someone Cares Soup Kitchen, right? The medical field is similar because as a doctor, it's a soup kitchen.
All the time, over and over again. Okay.
It's a soup kitchen, right? It's not similar to being a doctor. It's a soup kitchen.
Yeah.
Okay. Habitat for Humanity. Oh, I love this one. These buzzwords, right? We quickly assessed after critically analyzing. And then I will be able to keep using these abilities, right? It's just tweaking your words a little bit. These abilities to think critically as well as blah, blah, blah. Again, just very common ways of just putting up a barrier of, I want to connect with you as the reader, and you just are not trying to connect with me as a reader. Okay? You have to think of that reader as your best friend, and you're writing a little like pen pal letter to them.
Okay.
Stay away from the sales pitch and just connect. Okay? Full-time service and what is that word?
Ecclesiastical.
Ecclesiastical. What is that word?
Basically again, this is something I've heard from quite a few different individuals. It's a way to get away from religion.
Okay.
So it essentially means the same thing as religion, but without saying it.
Okay. So that's interesting. Let's talk about why you broke open the thesaurus for this. You just push back on religion and you don't want anyone to hold that against you?
Yeah. So some of the admissions committees I've met with, have expressed concern that sometimes religion can get in the way of proper healing, proper medicine.
Yeah.
In the case of
we're dealing with it with the pandemic.
Yeah. So to avoid that, and just trying to keep it as secular as possible.
Okay. Interesting.
And I didn't actually think so ecclesiastical is actually used quite a bit in my setting, and so it's something I'm familiar with, but I didn't take into account that that's not something that is common knowledge for most.
I have a very poor vocabulary, so big words are very hard for me.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. I understand that rationale and that thought. I think there's a difference between religious and evangelical, like radical.
Yeah, for sure.
Which is potentially more of the issue from a science perspective. Nobody's gonna blow away COVID with their breath, unfortunately.
Wimhoff would disagree.
I think you need to be yourself, right? And obviously, if that's a common word that you use normally, then great. But don't be afraid to be yourself, because I worry in the kind of typical scenario I throw students in is what happens if you end up at a school that doesn't support religion at all, right? And is very anti-religion because you tried to hide it or use different fancier words to talk around it. And then you end up in an environment where you're not happy because you don't feel supported or like welcome at all. Mm-hmm. So that's where I just be yourself. And obviously there are limits to that. But decent job here. Again, in the future, I will work collaboratively with a variety of physicians, right? Trying to extend out how's this gonna look in terms of how's this gonna help me as a doctor. Volunteering for Utah State Mental Hospital, so decent job there. Then we get to personal statement. Personal statement for me, why do you want to be a physician, right? The story behind why you want to be a physician. And so you start here with a story of coming from kind of an underserved, underprivileged background, right? And that's kind of the bulk of your story. The bulk of your story is, I was underserved. I want to serve those people now that I'm in a position where I can, okay? Very common, right? You're like, well, my unique story. This is a very common story of wanting.
Not very unique.
Wanting to come up. It's good. It's good. And that's okay, right? Common is okay. Cliche, we want to throw out cliche. Common is okay. And so I wrote here, these experiences, talking about your collarbone and your anaphylactic reaction. These experiences instilled in me a desire to provide others with the help and healing that I could not access. Since wearing that sling, I committed myself to serve others as a doctor, blah, blah, blah. And I'll get to the blah, blah, blah in a second. So the first sentence, decent, right? It's a decent seed of your story of why you chose to go down this path. It's missing some connections because there are lots of people who are underserved, underprivileged, who those people don't want to grow up and be doctors in the future. So there's some connection potentially missing of what was it exactly that led to this decision for you, this path for you specifically. And I say the same thing for anyone who has a parent die, a grandparent die, their own medical illnesses. Like lots of people have trauma and tragedy in their life who don't want to go on and be physicians. What is that connection? And it's usually that missing kind of discussion that makes it so much clearer and understandable for the person reading it. And then the blah, blah, blah at the end that I was mentioning earlier, I wrote here, it's lots of buzzwords that just seem to come out of nowhere.
Yeah. Okay.
Right? It's like, you're like, did the research on all of the medical schools and pulled all of these like who do they want to serve type statements, and it's like I want to be a doctor who reduces healthcare disparities by approaching patients with compassion and understanding regardless of gender, race, and socioeconomic status. And like 6 buzzwords right there in one sentence. So that just seem to come out of nowhere and just thrown in there. So just be careful with that. Okay. And your next sentence here, mitigating barriers to healthcare access has become a major focus of my life and is the primary reason for my service at the Hope Clinic. Get rid of the Hope Clinic part of it. Mitigating barriers to healthcare access. Physicians don't really do that. They provide the healthcare to people who have access to it, right? And yeah, sure, there are some superstar physicians who are out there fighting and mitigating access as well. So there's some potential reasons or stories in your personal statement, and with some of your experiences, I'm like, well, do you want to be a doctor? Right? You had said you kind of rehashed your personal statement. It'd be interesting to know what it was before, because this looks more like policy kind of stuff that you may be interested in. I don't know. And it's interesting, without saying the school that you got into, it makes sense, the school that you got into, because that's a big part of their mission. So I wonder if there was some connection there behind it. The majority of your focus, the theme of your personal statement, I'm assuming you went in writing your personal statement knowing, like, my theme is disparities in access. Right? Correct. And so I've done this once or twice. You have this story of David, which is great. I love stories. I want to hear stories. But instead of helping me understand why David's story confirmed your desire to be a physician, you said, some caretakers saw the experience as evidence of David's own neglect, right? How dare you? You're just lazy. You're a diabetic. You're whatever. I immediately recognized the starring role healthcare inequalities played in his experience. All right. So instead of focusing on you and why you want to be a physician, the focus is on healthcare inequalities.
Policy, yeah.
Because that's your theme. And this is why I don't like themes, because it forces a narrative. It keeps you in a box instead of being able to just kind of flow and talk and do what you want to do. Okay? Everything has to be inequalities, healthcare disparities, all this stuff.
Yeah, that's fair.
And then, again, more of David in this next paragraph, more discussion on what's going on. And this, again, reflection that I typically teach students, like, focus on how this strengthened your desire to be a physician. You have, this sparked my desire to close the healthcare inequalities that exist in a system that failed David and ensure the system protects future patients like him. And so my comment that I wrote here on the side, why not go into policy?
Yeah.
Right? Policy, policy, policy. That's a huge policy statement, which is great. Physicians can go into policy, but you don't have to be a physician to go into policy. Have the needed line of fascination with the human body. We just had to throw that one in there.
Yeah, right. Got to throw in some science.
Gotta. I was doubting it, and I'm like, oh God, thank you. He said he's fascinated. And not just fascinated with the human body. In the next paragraph, your passion for understanding the human body. Not only are you fascinated, you're passionate about understanding it as well. So we got the two angles done. And then you have a sentence here, despite recent setbacks in the 2021 application cycle. You don't need that in your personal statement. I think it's a distraction. There are lots of people who reapply to medical school. Lots of reasons why. So not needed to get there. And then again, just finishing with the buzzwords of patients regardless of race, gender, ability to pay, blah, blah, blah. So the lack of recent shadowing, lots of clinical experience. You were the Spanish medical interpreter. And then, where was the other one? Oh no, that was the other thing. The lack of clinical experience, recent clinical experience. I think you're doing it now, but it's not on your application. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was the other thing when looking at your application, was a big question mark. And hopefully you were able to tell schools in your secondary essays what you were planning on doing.
Yeah. Almost every school asked, hey, what are your plans for this future upcoming year? Yeah. And then, yeah.
Okay. And so taking a look at, we'll take a look at your school list real quick. Decent school list. Very, very heavy hitting school list.
Yes.
Right?
Uh-huh.
If the Reddit users look at this or SDN, they immediately go, "Oh, you just applied to too heavy of a school list. You got 5 interviews." So that's not the reason you didn't get in medical school, although you did get in medical school this cycle. I think the fact that you got 5 interviews with this school list is fantastic. I think it could have been maybe all of the schools with some different styles and different connection abilities. But obviously 5 schools were like, hey, good enough stats. Yeah. Not the best descriptions, but every student writes like that. Yeah. And so you were able to get that, get the interview, get the acceptance with that heavy hitting school list. The one thing I wanted to look at from a secondary essay standpoint, your essay here, and this is, you kind of gave us kind of some sample essays and not necessarily one specific one, but the reapplication essay, like what have you done? And I think it could have been a lot stronger if you led with where you thought you were weak before. I love when students can call themselves out and be like, yeah, like I sucked here. I didn't have enough of this experience and whatever. And so yours was basically like, I just rewrote my personal statement and activities and talked to a bunch of people and hopefully you'll like me different this time. And so being able to reflect and go, I needed to reapply because of X, Y, or Z, and call that out and then point out what you're doing to work on those things, make for a much stronger kind of reapplicant question. You got the acceptance.
Yeah, right.
I think, again, I wanted you on because with such high stats, students freak out and they think, well, every medical school will want you. And it's never the case. Yeah. And then when you kind of, in my mind, actively put up a wall to allow that human-to-human connection by buzzwords and pitching and all this stuff instead of letting me see who you are, both on paper in an application and potentially during your interviews as well, you're missing tremendous opportunities for other people to accept you and invite you for interviews.
Okay, duly noted. Yeah, I definitely appreciate the feedback. I think, if this can help someone else not have to go through the same frustration of working so hard to get those scores, but then just poorly writing everything. That'll be great.
What's your number one kind of just reflection going through this application process a second time?
It's been finding the silver lining in this difficult process, right? So it's been hard. It's been frustrating to be, to send everything out and then just to get rejection after rejection after rejection. Yeah. But I think the main reflection has been, as cliche as it is, but it's really taught me a lot. It's humbled me. I think it's made me more aware of those weaknesses, and I think I've gained, a lot of experience in this past year that will ultimately make me a better student at med school. And so it sucks having to wait a year, but in the scheme of things, it's not the end of the world.
Yeah. It's funny how even in that conversation and your answer to me, you still were able to work in, I had this experience and here's how it's going to help me in the future. It's so funny.
I'm a salesman through and through.
So ingrained.
Yeah. That summer might have hurt me more than helped.
Yeah, it's interesting, but you got the acceptance. What was it like? Was it a phone call? Was it an email? What was that moment like?
I remember seeing it, thinking it was a rejection because I've just been, conditioned up to this point.
Pavlov, you're like, email. Oh,
dang it. But then I started reading it and, it's still surreal. It came a week before Christmas. My wife had already left. And so I called her. She was on the plane about to depart for home. We were going to meet up because I was working Christmas Eve. Yeah. But she was crying on the plane. It was absolutely fantastic experience.
Nice.
So,
Well, congratulations. Thanks again for coming on and being vulnerable and sharing an application that was successful and still allowing me to pick it apart and look for places where it could have been even more successful. So congratulations on all your success and good luck in the future.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.